You're all doomed. Doomed. Because these videos contain spoilers. You're all doomed. Okay then. Friday the 13th part 1 from 1980. Jason mask, but we don't see that in this one, so we're going to put that to a side for a minute. We don't see Jason in this one, not as we know him anyway. But the film starts off set in 1958, and there's some teenagers at Camp Crystal Lake, aka Camp Blood. Some teenagers, and they decided, instead of singing campfire tales or anything like that, they go off and want to get their way with each other. Hence the killings start. We get to see killings, and then from there on we fast forward to modern day Friday the 13th, where the story is set in the present. And basically they've got Camp Crystal, or aka Camp Blood as the locals call it, and everything like that. It's a slow burning one, the first Friday the 13th, because like I said, we don't really get to see the adult Jason, or along those lines as we know him these days. But part one's a bit of a slow burner. It's a bit of a mystery film, and the killer is not Jason, but Jason was the one that drowned, as we find out towards the end of the film, and it was blamed on the teenagers. We've got Kevin Bacon in this. Kevin Bacon, who we know from Apollo 13 and Tremors.
Footloose.
Footloose, of course, yeah, and the phone commercials and stuff like that. But he makes I think it might be his debut in this film as well, in 1980. What did you think to Friday the 13th Part 1, Steve?
When I first originally watched it many years ago, I enjoyed the film. Now it's still a classic, but it bores me compared to the newer ones, realistically.
I mean, I'm looking forward to getting on to some of the later ones as well, actually with Mr. Voorhees in. But in this one we've got Mrs. Voorhees, well, the mum, who basically, she does the killings, doesn't she?
Yeah.
She's an unseen force in this, but until towards the end, and where there's only one teenager left, and there's this lady left at the end out of all of them. And Mrs. Voorhees just show up and gives you like false pretensions that, you know, she's the saviour and there to save the day because everybody's getting killed left and right. Like I said, we don't see the killer or anything like that, so that's a bit, I thought that was quite inventive in itself in general, because who is the killer? It could be anyone. It could be the wacko guy that keeps telling everyone that they're doomed and everything like that. But we don't know who the killer is. But I think it's common knowledge that Mrs. Voorhees was the killer in Friday the 13th Part 1, aka Jason's mum. Jason drowned in the lake. There's a bit of I'm not going to give away the ending, but there is a bit of a twist ending as well. Was it a dream? Was it not a dream, sort of thing? But you thought it was a bit slow burning as well, didn't you, the first Friday the 13th?
Yeah, as I say, originally, when I first watched it, good film. Now it's just too slow, takes too long to get into everything, and
it is very off its time, isn't it?
Yeah, it depends what you like in things, because if you don't mind the slow burning, the slow build-up, then it's a perfect film. But films nowadays get you into action a lot faster, gets you into killings a lot faster.
Oh yeah, and fast cutting.
It's what we've learnt to get to, and going back to the older versions of films which take longer to get into, can drag and can be boring.
And it's not a perfect film, but it is. But in the same sense, it's still a classic as well, because you've got to kind of respect it as well, I think. Because it sets off the trend for what would come later on. And the killings are quite... Would you say the killings were inventive?
They were for back in the day. They could have been more inventive, but it was also, rather than it being over the top, it was more realistic that it could happen.
Yeah, like anything like... Maybe they might have been going for that Sean S. Cunningham, the director. Maybe he might have been going for that approach, having a realistic killer sort of thing, rather than a Freddy Krueger who won't come till later on, or a Michael Myers who we saw in John Carpenter's Halloween and stuff like that. But in general, it's a slow burner. If you've never seen it before, I hope you haven't spoiled it or anything like that. But I haven't given away everything. But it was very off its time, I'll give it that. And I've got to say as well, Paul Snake. Paul Snake in that film as well, so they'll never be able to get away with that now. But just in general, Friday the 13th Part 1, what would you give it out of 5? I'd probably personally give it a 2.5 or something.
Back in the day, if you'd have asked me, and I haven't watched all of them and the way that they are now, I would have given it about a 3 to a 4. Now I'm probably going to stick with 2.5 as well.
That's fair enough. But don't let that deter you or anything like that, as in the people at home or anything like that, because for horror fans, you know, the iconicness would start setting in. I'm not saying that this can't be an iconic film or anything like that, but just in general, as in the first one. But Friday the 13th should be watched, the series, I think. And of course, Friday the 13th would spawn a series itself, a TV series, which had nothing to do with the film series or anything like that.
Yeah, unfortunately.
But each one to their own, I think, at the end of the day. Stay tuned for more Friday the 13th reviews. You're all doomed. Doomed. Because these videos contain spoilers. You're all doomed. Friday the 13th, Part 2 from 1981. Part 2, here we go.
Happy days.
I thought this was actually better than the first one. I enjoyed it more because the kills were more constant and it was less of a build up, like we said in the first one. Basically, it opens with like a recap of the first film, of what happened at the end of it. So go and watch the film now, or soon enough. And basically, we've got the survivor at the end of the first one who gets caught up by a murderer. Who's the murderer?
Jason.
Good old Jason. It's Jason this time. But we've still got to wait to get to the hockey mask, but he's wearing like a bag over his head with the eye cut out, left eye cut out. And he gets old off the original survivor in vengeance for his mum. So Jason is a mummy's boy.
Yeah, he's a mummy's boy who's just getting vengeance realistically.
He's getting vengeance, yes, for them killing his mother in the first film.
The one thing I do have to say about everybody within this one is, you're all doomed.
From the original film, there was a guy saying you're all doomed, and he turns up again in this one because the teenagers are back at Camp Crystal Lake, Camp Blood, and the old bloke's back, isn't he?
Yeah, the old bloke's back.
Not for very long though.
No, you've got to watch it to find out exactly what happens with him.
Yeah, exactly.
It's a pretty gruesome way to go.
Yeah. See how he goes. In this film, there's like a little doggy as well, isn't there, called Muffin as well, and as the kills are going on, because there ain't that much of a story apart from the teenagers getting hacked off one by one in killer ways and stuff like that. it comes to the conclusion that there's another lone survivor, and the lone survivor must fight Jason at the end with his bag on, and we get to see more false endings sort of thing, jump surprises and more horror basically. Did you have any favourite kills in this?
They were all pretty gruesome in their own rights. The spear, I'm not going to spoil exactly what happens with the spear, but the spear was quite a good kill for what it was as well.
The spear was a good kill, yeah, I agree with that. And the spear, I won't give it away, but the spear comes from one of the teenagers, so I won't give too much away there. And Jason is on the loose in this film, getting vengeance for his mum. It's a crazy one, because I call it crazy. I call most of these films crazy because they are actually mentally insane, a bit like Mrs. Voorhees from the original film. But in this one, Jason's all grown up, isn't he?
Oh yeah, full-fledged adult.
He's a big lad, Jason is. He's a big lad. And as the series goes on, you know, he would get the mask and everything, but like I said, at the moment, he's hiding away his poor deformed face from the public. And I think Jason's quite shy, really, don't you?
Yeah, to an extent. He doesn't like to be seen unless he's about to kill someone. So,
Yeah.
Then again, what colour would?
Yeah, he likes to pop out and kill people, doesn't he? Jason does. He does indeed. Well, that was our look at Friday the 13th Part 2. Anything more else to add on Friday the 13th Part 2? Any characters that stuck out?
Out of a score of 5, I pretty much give this one a 3 compared to the last, just because I know how much better they are as they go along.
Yeah, I agree. I was actually going to give it a 3 as well, saying that it was a bit more inventive and a bit less drawn out than the first one was. I did enjoy Part 2. Looking forward to Part 3 when we get around to it. But the Friday the 13th series would continue on and on and on and on throughout the years, almost making a film each year, until it actually got rebooted and they took a big gap out, and Paramount and New Line Cinema ended up rebooting it down the line and stuff like that, but that's another film in itself. But for the minute, we'll leave you with Part 2. Go check out Part 2. It's an enjoyable one, loads of kills, guy in the wheelchair, guy gets hung upside down, and probably shouldn't give too much away really. Check it out. You're all doomed. Doomed. Because these videos contain spoilers. You're all doomed. Friday the 13th, Part 3. Part 3D by Steve Miner. This one starts out with another recap from the second one, and in this one Jason gets his trusted hotkey mask. Yes, he does. In the third one. What I liked about this film is the music. The music was really interesting, it was very funky, and the kills were coming one after another and everything like that, so that was really good. And the kills are getting more gorier in the series and everything, which is top notch. And like I said, the third one was supposed to be in 3D and was by Steve Miner, who previously was going to do a Godzilla film in 3D in America, but ended up doing Friday the 13th Part 3 3D. Also, what happens in this film, we get to see more teenagers, and Jason gets his trusty mask, get rid of the bag and everything, and he gets the mask from a hapless teenager. They're all pulling pranks, they're all trying to outdo each other, there's jump scares here and there, false kills and everything, until Jason gets his mask back. Well, the mask in the first place. Isn't that right, Jason?
Indeed.
Jason is normally the silent type and everything, and he is. But in this one, we're left with another female trying to fight Jason. She tries to hang him, and she also gets the axe and tries to smash his head in with it as well. Tries to chop him up into bits. There's another ending which kind of tries to tie it all up at the end of the film, with, again, with the female, if you've seen the previous films, is on a not like a boat. And I won't give away the ending too much or anything like that, but I do feel that this one was supposed to have been the last Friday the 13th. So hats off, because the reason why I say that, because it doesn't really leave it open or anything like that for a sequel. But my hat goes off to Steve Miner, the director, for doing this, even though I think this film has come with criticism over the years because of introducing the mask in the first place. And Jason is very handy with weapons and DIY tools and inventive kills and everything. So Jason is back in this one, and he's back in full force, and we're starting to shape the character of Jason Voorhees. Like I said, the beginning opens up with like a prologue from the second film, and because of that we get to see, if you've seen the previous films, you'll get to see what happened at the end of the second film with our hapless victim female and the severed head of Mrs. Voorhees. I would recommend this one because it was a lot more fast paced, but the one I'm looking forward to is Friday the 13th Part 4, starring Corey Feldman, who we know from The Lost Boys and Goonies. But if you do check out Friday the 13th, check it out, make up your own mind about it, because this is an enjoyable adventure. Horror, but this is horror at the end of the day. And because of that, we get to see Jason start to take form, and all these hapless killings, merciless killings, begin again or continue into the series. Not going to give away the ending or anything like that, but we'll leave it at that. So just check out Friday the 13th Part 3 3D. You're all doomed. Doomed. Because these videos contain spoilers. You're all doomed. Friday the 13th, the final chapter, is the fourth installment of the franchise. The film starts off with like a recap of the first three films, and after that we start off in like a morgue, a hospital sort of thing, where the bodies have been taken away, and Jason's body's been taken away from being slaughtered at the end of Part 3, or seemingly killed. Jason wakes up in the morgue and attacks a nurse and her nurse male lover, and goes on a rampage again and heads his way back to Camp Crystal Lake. And here we get more slaughter, more hapless teenagers, more loved up teenagers, all being slaughtered basically. The film also stars Corey Feldman. Corey Feldman plays a young lad in this. He also did Gremlins at around about the same time in 1984. And the young Corey Feldman is into his masks, into his special effects makeup and everything like that. And that comes to play later on in the film. He's going around trying to scare his sister, I believe, and her friends and stuff like that, but he's a bit of a nerdy kid, Corey Feldman is in this, but there isn't too much to say in general about this film, apart from there are more murders, there is more gore in this film. A lot of it was cut out, I believe, especially with the over-the-top special effects. The film comes to a conclusion at the end where Jason's pursuing one female and Tommy, played by Corey Feldman, at the end of it. The character Tommy would actually go on later on down the line to actually play in different films as a grown-up character. Back to 1984's The Final Chapter, as it was called and marketed as, Jason is after this last female and Tommy, and in a bizarre twist, Tommy becomes the saviour of the film. This is in spoiler territory now, because Tommy actually ends up shaving his locks and his hair, and ends up hacking Jason half to death, in quite a disturbing scene at the end of the film. But coming towards the end of the film, it's also like, is Jason dead? Is this really the final chapter? But at the end, Tommy, Corey Feldman, opens his eyes at the end and just looks into the camera and saying, is this guy now the killer sort of thing? Has he got Jason's spirit? Is he the one that's gonna do the murders from now on sort of thing? It teases that anyway to try and conclude Friday the 13th Part 4. Or The Final Chapter, as it's called. I enjoyed this film. I thought it was a great entry in the franchise. I thought the music was pretty good as well. It helped, like, the production values of the film, and just basically just boosted it a little bit, as well as the special effects, of course. The special effects were cut and a bit over the top and gory and everything. Tommy, the character played by Corey Feldman, is quite a likeable character, if not a little bit annoying at times. But there we have it. Friday the 13th, The Final Chapter. Anything else to add on this? Has Jason finally met his match in Tommy? Like I said, Tommy's a recurring character later on down the line. So, Friday the 13th, The Final Chapter. You're doomed. Doomed. Because these videos contain spoilers. You're all doomed. Friday the 13th, Part 5, The New Beginning. Just watched it. Not watched it in years. Follows Friday the 13th, The Final Chapter, which was Part 4. The film basically opens up with a thunderstorm, so I'm looking at my notes here. Thunderstorm, Corey Feldman's basically from the fourth one is heading into like the woods. It's all thunderstorming, raining, and there's a grave being dug, and it's Jason Voorhees' grave. It's being dug by a couple of guys, and Jason comes out, kills them, as you can expect. And Jason goes for Tommy Jarvis, played by Corey Feldman. And it ends up being a dream, doesn't it?
It does, yes.
Because Tommy's all grown up now.
He is.
And Tommy's been led off to a mental institution for mental health and everything. And what did you get from this film?
Well, I thought some of the kills were quite inventive.
You like the kills? There's always the invented kills in a Friday the 13th film.
I particularly like the one where the woman gets her eyes taken out by the garden shears.
Oh, cheers, yeah. There's a couple, and they get naked and everything like that, so if you're going to have sex in these films, you know you're bound to end up dead by Jason. Or is it Jason?
Well, as it turns out, it isn't Jason.
No. What can we add to that?
And then you think Jason does turn up, but again it turns out it's another one of Tommy's fantasies / dreams.
Yeah, with the old grown-up Tommy, this is played by another actor. But the kills were quite constant. They were like every 10 minutes or so. But the ending kind of let it down a little bit. We thought it was a bit of a weak ending, we thought, didn't we?
Well, yeah, because it turns out Jason's not actually in the film other than in Tommy's dreams.
Yeah, so it's like a fantasy. Is it real? Is it not real sort of thing? Tommy's facing his demons in Jason, basically. And Tommy doesn't really turn up till towards the end, if I remember correctly. He is in the film, don't get me wrong, but he doesn't actually turn up till towards the end when Jason's going after like this kid at the mental institute because his grandfather works there, and a woman's being pursued, and the final actors that are survivors even are being pursued towards the end, and Tommy turns up, but you know Tommy's got to face these demons. Maybe that's a metaphor or something like that. Maybe Tommy's got to face Jason in his nightmares, basically.
Yeah.
I think that's a good way of looking at it. I wonder if that's what the director intended, to be honest.
I'm not sure.
What would you give it out of? Probably a 5.
I don't know, the thing is, the only thing that annoyed me was that it's not actually Jason who does all the killing.
Yeah.
But the kills are quite inventive and quite good fun, and they come, quite thick and fast.
And they did look a bit cut down though, didn't they?
Well, I think there was a bit of, of cutting.
MPA, MP, is it the MPAA or whatever it is that cut it in America? So I know it's a
probably, yeah. Someone had cut it anyway.
It had been cut, like a lot of these Friday the 13th films get cut, and it felt like a whodunit Scooby-Doo sort of thing, didn't it?
I wouldn't say it was that tame.
Oh no, I'm not calling it tame, but it's like who is the killer at the end of the day sort of thing. And we all know it's going to be either Jason or not. Well, it's an interesting film, isn't it? I thought
it is, yeah.
Out of 5, because of the ending I laid down, I'd probably give it a 2.5. What do you think?
Well, I'm going to go for a 3.
Okay.
But it could have been a 4 had Jason been in it. Had Jason actually been in the film.
Yeah. Have you got any favourite Friday the 13th films in general that you can remember? Part 4 was a good entry, but as a follow-up, this kind of started off well, but kind of got let down towards the end, and maybe it might have been a production value thing where the ending was a bit of a throwaway sort of thing.
To be honest, I like the second one.
Yeah, I like the second and third one. I thought they gradually got better as they went on. And this one just made for interesting viewing, really. But
yeah,
if you don't expect too much out of this, because you know what the premise is, people are going to get killed, sort of thing. It made for a very interesting entry in the franchise. And part 6 was personally, if I remember correctly, when the one that followed this, was an interesting and even better entry, if not a bit silly in places, but fun in part 6. Yes. Anything else to add?
Not really, other than I just wish Jason had actually been in the film.
That's fair enough. That's just John W.T.'s opinion. Like I said, there were a few inventive kills in there, stake through the stomach sort of thing. I felt bad for Joey, the mental patient.
Yeah, that was...
It was like, who is the killer? Who is the killer sort of thing throughout the whole thing. But like Joey, yeah, I felt sorry for Joey.
It turns out it's basically Joey's dad.
Yes, the paramedic. The paramedic, yeah, that's right. I don't think we'll give too much away now, but I think we have given a few bits away. But I always said these reviews contain spoilers. We'll leave it at that. Probably in the middle somewhere. Average.
Yeah.
Average film. But
Yeah.
I hope you enjoy it. Make up your own mind. Back to your time, John.
Thanks for your time, John.
Cheers, John.